if you are a family member who cares for another loved one, this is real common now. It just is. You've got spouses, children, siblings. It's all part and parcel. Who cares for the family caregivers? Those who need their own. Maybe the word sometimes is respite, but they may not get it. It's not easy. And I'm here to tell you, being absent, out of town, son with an elderly parent, there are a lot of things, and I'm not the caregiver, okay? But for those that are in that situation, it's very difficult. It's a good thing from the approach of mental and physical health. It's a good topic to approach with a good doctor today, Dr. John Braccio. drjohnb.com. That's the website for Regional Psychological Services of East Lansing, and he's on the other end of our line. Good morning, Doc. Welcome.
Well, good morning, and thank you. And I must say, we live in an age where millions of spouses, children, and siblings do look after their beloved members of their family. In fact, in 2020, 53 million Americans were offering unpaid care for adults with health and functional needs. And that's an increase, Dave, of 9.5 million from 2015.
Wow.
Now, the most common caregiver, these are really stark numbers. The most common caregiver is one spouse looking after the other. Another very common combination is a child or children looking after a parent. And too often these caretakers are taken for granted, and other family members or caring non-family are not aware. They really aren't aware. They minimize the problems they're experiencing, or sadly, in some cases, choose to ignore. Now, and my dad, I think most of us are quite high that we have a family caregiver, or we're aware of what the situation is occurring. And if this occurs, we really need to be aware that common issues that caregivers have, they include problems with managing time, physical and emotional distress, depression and isolation, financial concerns, sleep deprivation, guilt because they're not doing enough, and fear of asking for support. So when these things happen, family members and really caring friends, and often church persons, can do the following to try to be helpful. Help with everyday chores and needs, just kind of be there, emotional, psychological support, help with healthcare needs, as desired, and I mentioned this, as desired, give advice, try to help them recognize their emotional and physical needs are also priorities. So often, caregivers become ill, become very depressed, get down. So they need to recognize also that their health, both physical and mental, has to be a priority. And you have to make sure, if you're giving support, that you're not using guilt, like, well, you're the one who has to do it, or this is your responsibility. You need to be supportive. And then even if asked, you can seek out support persons or agencies that can be of support. And probably the most is being available, being on call, being willing to talk. Call it what you will, because you even said, like, you're a son of an aging parent, okay? So you try to be available. You try to do things. So these are things we can do, and this is a growing situation in America that, we talk about nursing homes, we talk about things like this, but there, as we said, and this is 2020 information, we have 53 million Americans offering unpaid care, for adults with health and functional needs. I mean, those are pretty vast numbers. So it is quite a situation. It's something that we do need to be helpful and tuned into these wonderful caregivers.
And I think the word I used earlier, I think it was the right word. I mean, to provide them, if you're, like you say, if you're another family member, not just the support, emotional support, but respite from this. Sometimes you've got to take a break. You need a break. My great uncle, he was a surgeon, Army surgeon in World War II. He was a wonderful guy, and his wife, she had a series of strokes. He cared for her, and he was a doctor, but he had retired his practice, and he cared for her, and it was 24/7. Her needs were so, and then when she passed, he passed immediately after. It was like his life was wrapped up into that, and he neglected him. And everyone in the family saw it, but we felt like there was nothing. My parents, there was nothing they could really say or do to help. But you're saying there are things. It may not be overt, but there are things that we can do to help a person like this, right? To assist.
There's no question that we can. Just to be available, to even have a set time to call, chores, needs, and then talking and coming over and even communicating and even spending time there with the person who's really, having a lot of physical, emotional needs. Just being available, coming over, talking, and really and trying to give good advice and being caring, being a friend, being someone who's really there. Availability is a big thing, and recognition, too. Recognition of what they're doing and helping. And there are a lot of there are a lot of helping groups. I work with a woman who's pretty homebound, and the church members are very involved, very helpful, do things.
Yeah, sure. Right.
So there are people, and there is also kind of a negative side, too. You do have the case where one sibling or one child is doing the dominant amount of work, or you don't really have a willingness for people to become involved. And it can also even cause conflicts if one spouse is looking after a parent and the other is not involved or doesn't want to be as involved or feels there's an unfairness in terms of family. So it becomes very, very, very confusing and difficult in many situations. To me, the key thing, though, is that we try to be helpful, even if we're a neighbor, just being available, doing chores, just doing small things. If a lot of people would just be tuned in, be aware when we see a caregiver and we see it, just trying to be a little helpful, being friendly, just being available is really a key thing, an important thing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm speaking from the perspective of a son with an elderly parent, but when you've got that with a sibling, and it happens to be my sister, it's not easy. It's harder on her. I mean, at one point I'm talking with mom, saying, Doc, hey, come live with us in Michigan. How about that? No. What? Do we? No, it's too cold. I'm like, we're not going sledding. I mean, it'll be fine. Where's my dog? You have good health care here. And, my sister's like this. She knows she had to go. I'm going to live with my sister. I don't want to live with her. Oh, yeah, well, you're going to have to pick one of these here. That's kind of where we were at that point. And it's tricky. But for that person who's doing all the other and picking up on it, it's hard. And there's cost involved. You talk about the emotional and physical toll. And then, as you said, one of your key words early is 50-some million unpaid, right? So there are plenty of people doing that without recompense. And that's what we do for one another and for family. But that doesn't cover all the bills, and it doesn't. So a lot of different. Yeah, go ahead.
If you have an older parent, or a spouse who can be old themselves and not in great health, this can be pretty depressing and overwhelming when all of your time or a good share is just in caregiving, and people may praise you, but they may not even call and ask about how you're doing. They'll call and say, hey, like, how is Mary or how is Billy doing, and kind of ignore the worn-out person who's on this,
that's a great
24/7. Yeah, and so respite. That was a good word. I think that's really true. We just need to try to be helpful, be more tuned in, and just do nice things. A call, a chore, taking someone to a doctor's office, coming in and just talking to the person and saying, hey, just take a ride or take a walk or take a shower or just do something. These are things that we can do for family, we can do for friends, we can do for neighbors, we can do for church members, we can do for whatever. Just being the Good Samaritan, just being helpful. And I work with people, have over the years, that have supportive people. And I work with people that don't have supportive people. So you just, just need to take the circumstances, be sensitive, be tuned in, and really just try to be helpful. And we need to be grateful in a society that 50 million people are doing that. We could say, well, it's their responsibility. We can say whatever we want, but that doesn't minimize the fact there are people that are loving, caring people, that millions of them, 50 million, that are doing this without being paid, out of love, out of caring, out of responsibility. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a good thing, but we just need to all be tuned in, be willing to help as best we can. It's the Good Samaritan in modern times, just trying to be the good guy.
And as you said, it with that number, as you're ticking off the boxes there, I'm relating it to my own, and other listeners I know are saying, "Oh yeah, that's us. That sounds like us."
Sure.
You would be really hard pressed to find, I think, a family in these United States, Doc, right now that doesn't have some example of this going on. That's why it's important that like you say, we recognize it. Yeah, it's just, and I don't think we talk about it enough either. I mean, I just think one of those things families don't say a lot about. We just go along, how do you, but knowing that the caregivers need care themselves, even if it's just a moral boost, an emotional boost, that can manifest, and it's a good thing overall. The good doctor here is Dr. John Braccio, Regional Psychological Services of East Lansing, Michigan, and the podcast on many, many issues involving mental health and our well-being, overall well-being, is at Dr. John B, letter B, drjohnb.com. That's the place to go. Always good to talk to you, my friend. We'll visit with you next week, all right? Enjoy.
Very good. Have a nice day.
Your first day of summer. Okay.
Yes,
thanks, Doc.
We'll enjoy it. Okay, bye-bye.
Absolutely. We're back in a moment on the Morning Wake Up. Don't go away. 1320 WILS.